With that, let's get started and meet our first speaker. With the 2024 election coming up and two very young and healthy candidates running, the American political climate has become increasingly important to understand, specifically how we are polarized by politics. So with that, please give a warm welcome to our first speaker, Sameera Akkenapally.
I was just 12 years old when the world shut down in 2020. In quarantine, I quickly became addicted to my phone. As I started to use my phone more, I also started using social media more. Watching the same liberal content over and over quickly turned me liberal. It became so easy to fall in love with the inclusivity that the left claims to promote. But there was one concept that I quickly adopted, which is often a downside to liberal media: cancel culture. Cancel culture, for those who don't know, is when the internet comes together to disapprove of or withdraw their support from a company, movement, or person because they did something socially unacceptable. It started out as something good. With the Me Too movement, many women were able to call out their abusers and get justice where the justice system failed. Others were able to call out people who held extreme views, such as the extermination of gay people. However, it would later morph into something a bit more unjust. Today, it isn't rare to see someone canceled for an old tweet they made 15 years ago. Needless to say, this led me to become very closed-minded. Anytime I had a differing opinion with anyone I met, it became almost instinct to stop listening to them. I would push back, not even thinking to consider that somehow my stance could be wrong. This is an example of political polarization. Political polarization is when people become so closed-minded and surrounded by people who think just like them. This can lead to extreme ideas, which can be dangerous, as we've seen play out in the January 6th riots. The gasoline to the fire is none other than social media. Algorithms which social media apps use to decide what to recommend to a user based on their past interactions often only recommend ideas we are familiar with. The way the algorithm is designed makes us less tolerant to new ideas and creates echo chambers. In an echo chamber, a person encounters only beliefs or opinions that align with theirs. This causes their existing views to be reinforced and rooted in their minds, resulting in them not considering any contradicting opinions. As dystopian as it is, social media companies can push some crazy ideas through algorithms, whether it's flat earth theories, promoting deepfakes, or even telling people to eat Tide Pods. These apps can do this because of us, the users. Algorithms are way more likely to push content that gets more engagement, likes, comments, and shares. In fact, a study done by the University of South Carolina found that habitual users of social media had forwarded 6 times more fake news and misinformation than users who use the apps less. This means misinformation and fake news can be spread to naive users who believe almost everything they see. Coming out of quarantine and returning to school, I formed an echo chamber. Myself, my friend group, and the media I consumed all affirmed my beliefs, which made my political stance more rooted. I was never able to fully challenge myself and wasn't willing to open up to new ideas. The first time I consumed something that contradicted my beliefs and was open-minded to a new idea was when I made a friend. Her name was Bernadette. We were in the same journalism class. I was just a freshman, new to high school, and she was a senior who was very welcoming and always had a smile on her face. We immediately hit it off when we first met. We would crack jokes and have conversations about life after high school. She helped me learn a lot. I would later learn she was a hardcore Christian conservative. We often tried our best to avoid politics, but rooted in our ways, we found it very difficult. She would say things I thought were crazy. I bet I would say things that probably made her lose brain cells too. But it was when I decided to stop arguing and just listen that something changed. I realized how important diversity of thought was, and how important it is to hear from other perspectives. This made me much more open-minded to new ideas. Being more open-minded to new ideas led me to become more centered. Although we may think of the political right and left as being very different, they're actually much more similar than we think. Many people on the left and right, in fact, share values and principles, but they express them differently, how they think is best. In other words, someone on the left and someone on the right are both trying to do what is right, but they have different definitions of what right is. Therefore, they act on it differently. This is why it's important to have insight into why someone believes something is right or wrong. So, questioning your thinking regularly can in fact be very good for you. It gives you perspective into what is truly right. A study done by UC Berkeley found that by regularly questioning your thinking, you can approach situations much more thoughtfully and navigate through strong emotions. It's important to be curious about other people and their morals so we can become better people. It's harder to do this nowadays because of algorithms. With the rise of short-form content, it's no surprise many of us jump to conclusions quickly when it comes to politics. When was the last time you finished reading an article entirely? Headlines become the entire story. According to the Pew Research Center, half of all Americans get their news from social media. Although this can be a good thing because it makes current events and news much more accessible to the public, it can also be a bad thing. Users are impressionable. The Pew Research Center also found that 18% of Americans rely solely on social media for news, but as a result, have less knowledge about political news in general, rather than the rest of Americans who get their news in other ways, such as newspapers and articles. Of course, there will always be bias to everything you read, but getting your news from a variety of sources can help eliminate misinformation and, of course, bias where it lies. Algorithms will even go as far as to tracking your location to decide what to recommend. An example, Florida and California. These two states are known for having very different political alignments. California as a state is known for being quite liberal, whereas Florida as a state is known for being quite conservative. If you were to look up Roe v. Wade in California, it's likely an article about pro-choice efforts from MSNBC, a left-leaning network is to pop up. But in Florida, it's likely an article about pro-life efforts from Fox, a right-leaning network is to pop up. This is because Google tracks your location to personalize results, so you'll like the content more, even if it's inaccurate. In a world full of different political ideas and turmoil, it's important we learn to navigate this world in a truly open-minded manner and to hear why someone believes what they do. So, just as my good friend Bernadette helped me learn, being curious about new ideas is important. If you're constantly being exposed to the same ideas, whether it's because of where you live or the media you consume, it's no wonder we find people on the extreme end of things. Being curious leads you to be more open-minded. Whether you're a liberal, conservative, or moderate like me, listening to others is important. Challenging your beliefs is even more important. Because if your beliefs can't be challenged, are they really that strong anyway? Thank you.